All right. Hey, welcome everybody. Excited to be here for day 2 after the Ignite the Next Generation Summit. We had an awesome day 1 and followed it up with just as good or maybe even better day 2. It was amazing today and so excited for these calls because we get an opportunity to come together and talk about the different people we had presenting today. And for any of you that are joining us on any of these lives on any of the social medias and you haven't been a part of this yet, I'm sure you're going to see it on your screen right away here, but James will put up the link, but you can go join it right now for free and still get all of the replays. It's ignitenextgen.com. But welcome everyone. Let's quickly go through and just do some introductions. Who's with us today? James, you're on at least on my screen, you're the first one. So do you want to start us off?
Yep, as you can see on the page, I'm James McLam, founder and CEO of Generation Youth, and one of the hosts for Igniting Generation and Next Generation. I've been here since the beginning.
Awesome. Thank you, James. Justin, go ahead.
Well, hello, everybody. So I wasn't a speaker today, but I had so many questions for the speakers that actually spoke today that I decided to come in and come chat. So I'm actually speaking tomorrow. So if you want to see that video, just go check that tomorrow. But anyway, I'm a public speaker, and I teach people how to resolve bullying issues through conflict resolution. But we'll get back to that tomorrow. In the meantime, let's focus on today. So next person.
Thanks, Justin. Mike, go ahead.
Hi, I'm from the Center for the Respect. Mike Domish is my name, and I speak in everything from schools and universities. Last night, I spoke to the U.S. Naval Academy, and tomorrow I'll be speaking at a prep school in Alabama. So that's just the way I live my life on the road, speaking in schools, talking about respect, especially in relationships and intimacy and boundaries and what that looks like to have healthy relationships.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Nikki, I had an opportunity to listen to yours today at 1.5 speed, and it was like I had an energy drink by the time I was done listening to that.
Let's go. Yes, I'm a walking shot of espresso, y'all. That's what I love to hear. My name is Nikki Joyner, and I'm a career readiness speaker. So I get to travel around the country and talk to students to really help them navigate their future careers with confidence and clarity. I spent years working at a Fortune 20 company, hiring college students into their first summer practicum or internship or full-time job. So I have since now taken that on the road and give way better advice than Google and AI. So here we are. I'm excited to be here today. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome.
I actually took some notes. We'll get to yours in a moment, but I did take some notes from yours when you sent it up to be able to share with my job-seeking 21-year-old.
Yes, that's what I like to see.
Awesome. Kevin, go ahead.
Oh, last but not least, thank you so much for having me again. My name is Kevin McKella. I'm a youth speaker, and I also a musician, and I teach students how to make better decisions because, so much of our life and so much of our mental health is based on the decisions we make, both intrinsically and extrinsically. So yeah, super pumped to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. And I'm Jeff Higgy. Along with James and Tammy, I've been from the beginning. It's been awesome and really cool. All the people we've had coming into these summits and who we've been able to meet, and so it's been awesome. But let's start off with James. James, what we want to do is we want to go through each of you, kind of talk a little bit about what your message was, but then I want to hear everyone's thoughts on it and questions, everything that we can share with the audience on this live right now. And also, if you're listening to this, if you put comments into the James, does it go to everyone that's sharing? Are we going to be able to see those?
If people will post comments,
okay.
Some destinations we won't get comments from, unfortunately, but some we will. And if we do, I think Facebook is one that does it the best. So if you're on Facebook, you're in the group or something, and you want to comment or say hey or something, it'll show up, and I can put it across the screen. So
yeah. So first of all, if you are watching or listening, just throw in the chat the comments where you're from, and also as we're going, if you have any questions or comments, please add those as well. But James, let's talk about yours. Go ahead, start us off with a recap.
Well, I talked about the superpower that you're not using, which is really the having the right attitude, the attitude of gratitude. And I must confess, this was something this was not the topic I thought I was going to do back in the fall. But as things began to happen after Christmas and I got ready to record this, I began to see that a lot of the youth that I was working with were just grumpy about everything, and it was affecting their mental health in some ways, the way they were interacting, their relationships with each other. And I was just flipping through an old Zig Ziglar book, and he said, the greatest attitude you can have is the attitude of gratitude. And I was like, gosh, that's a great thing. That's like a superpower. It's hard to be depressed. It's hard to be angry if you're grateful for the things in your life. And I thought, ooh, let's talk about that. Because at the same time, I was trying to tell my 14-year-old to be also grateful about the things that were in her life and try to teach her as well. So I thought, if that's what this dad is going through, there may be some young people who need to hear this as well. So I really wanted to share that with folks, the really shifting their focus to not what's wrong during challenging times, but what's right, kind of using it as a flashlight in the dark. Hey, you may be going through some tough times. Maybe your grades are not what they need to be at school. Maybe you didn't make that athletic team. Maybe you didn't get that part-time job or even that full-time job that you wanted, or having a rough relationships with parents or something. But if we can just focus on what is going right, it'll just change your perspective and everything. That's really what I was hoping for, was to help people see that gratitude isn't just a warm, fuzzy feeling, that it's a mindset that can really transform what your outlook is on life, your relationships, and everything. So very simple concept, something that probably they've heard before. You got to be grateful for what you have in life. But I wanted to reinforce that with them because I just feel like we need more reinforcement for it.
There's a couple things in there. You just pointed out one of them that I really appreciated what you talked about is it's not just a feeling, that it is a mindset. And and the other thing that ties to is even in tough times, we can have gratitude and the impact that can have on us even in those tough times. I really appreciated that message. Anyone else have any comments or questions for James?
It was funny you say, because that's a piece of what I speak to students about as well. Because, like I said, James, it really is it could be such a leverage point if we are grateful. I think one of the things for me is that I found it's tricky for the students to, without some type of daily practice, daily ritual, something, it's tricky to just say, just be grateful, so I try to give them some tools of daily habit building and say, okay, this is how we be grateful every day, it's great. It's a great message.
Well, thank you. And it's one that I have to, you preach this stuff, you better live it yourself. And it's one that I've had to look at and say, okay, you're in a grumpy mood today. What's something that you can be? And I didn't really put this in too much about it, but there's so many people that I know that I respect in the personal development, in the leadership arena, that talks about having daily gratitude walks in which they just clear their mind and think first about what they're grateful for before they even think about the issues or problems or situations that they need to address that day. And it puts them in a frame of mind so that they can see it in a better light.
That's awesome. And this is for all the speakers, but when you go to James's page where you're going to be able to listen to him speak, you're also going to find all the links to connect with him, his podcasts, a link to his book, Tomorrow's Youth, Reaching a Hope Deferred Generation. So make sure with all the speakers, when you're on their page, look at everything that's on there so you can connect with them, follow them, and support them as well. All right. Well, thank you, James. Let's jump down to Mike. Mike.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what you talked about, and then let's get into that.
Yeah, so what we specifically focused in on this case was consent and the whole idea of asking first, and really breaking down the barriers that a lot of young people have around this. So if you walk into any high school, even middle school, and you say, do most people ask or do they go for it in the actual situation? They all say they go for it, even though they've been taught about consent, even though they've been taught about asking first, because they don't believe it's realistic, because nobody's ever addressed the barriers they have in their head about asking. They think it's going to ruin the moment. They think it's going to be awkward. So we took all that on and helped them recognize those are all myths. It's not awkward. It doesn't ruin the moment. In fact, going for it does both those things. It makes it insanely awkward. It can ruin the moment in seconds. And helping them recognize everything they're seeing in the media is the opposite of reality and actual intimacy. And so we do that. In our case, we actually showed footage from a live high school program so they could see students having these conversations and have them themselves so that they walk out with an actual skill set. You know, as we discussed just a moment ago, telling students what to do with no skills does not change behavior. They need to actually see it role played and think in their mind, oh my gosh, I could do that. Not only can I do that, I can't wait to try that. Like that, you want them to look forward to exercising that skill set in their life. And so that's what we focused on.
Thank
Do
you.
you find that the youth that you speak to in this particular topic, what's their response to it? Are they very receptive to it, or are they very like this old geezer here? He don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, no, they're
new century here.
So we are very data driven, and every high school audience does a post-event survey right in the last 10 minutes of the program. So I know walking off stage exactly what they were thinking in their minds, because it's an open-ended survey. We don't just preset them to only be able to answer 1 to 5. We have 1 to 5s, but we have open-ended. And this is an average, 93% of students after experiencing it say they're more likely to ask first than they were before they walked in the room. That's across all identity groups, demographics, everything. So they want this. They're just not getting it anywhere. So when you actually have the conversation, they're full of gratitude. They're like, wow. And here's the key. They're full of gratitude because we're not sugarcoating. We're being very realistic in their world. And it's not about me. So I can be this old guy, right? I'm a grandparent. I have 3 grandchildren. So they don't care because it's not about me. I'm not going in there going, when I dated or back in my day, my questions are all driven with them. Like I said before, do you ask or do you go for it? They yell, go for it. Why don't you ask? And they start yelling, it's going to ruin the moment. All right, let's talk about that. So it's so driven on them in their life and where they're at that I'm just the facilitator. They might not even remember my name. They'll remember me as the Can I Kiss You guy. Oh, there's the Can I Kiss You guy. And I'm okay with that because they're remembering the experience over me.
I think I
Can I Kiss You guy? I love that.
Speaker is the Can I Kiss You guy. I was thinking the same thing. Where's the Can I Kiss You guy?
Some branding right
Probably
there.
need a little context in that.
Yes, context is important.
What?
But I mean,
Any other-
About police
really
officer
fun.
about
So, as an example, when students get involved in our program, they're winning shirts that say, Can I Kiss You, with lips on the front. On the back, it says, do you ask, take a moment to care. So the students are doing everything they can to win these shirts during the program because they all want to wear that around the school. But it also keeps the message going all year because those shirts are walking around.
That's really
I like
cool.
that.
I like it. And again, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of educators and teachers watching this thing and, hey, we need that message. So make sure you go on his page and see where you can connect with him, his email, everything's on there. But any other questions or comments on Mike's presentation?
Well, you know what? I'm gonna give her a go. So I saw your presentation today, and I was like, yeah, like I watched it, and I was thinking about like all the times that when I was a kid, like trying to figure out this math equation of how girls work and how am I gonna go talk to her and stuff like that. And you showed it so simply that like it made me be like, yeah, you know what? Like I wish I knew this knowledge. All I can say is that I'm grateful, James, that you actually bring this, because honestly, I feel like there's a lot of benefit for people to learn the proper way. Because like it's like the old adage goes, right? A parent or a teacher is meant to show people what the world is, but also what the world ought to be. And I think what you show is very, very on that nose. That I wish like it was like that even back in my day. Anyway, I watched it. I thought it was great.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate that. And you know, one of the things that we really try to target when we're doing this work is what you just said, which is who do I want to be versus who is the world telling me to be? And it relates to what you said, James, too. And it's a big part of my work. I always tell students, why are you making these decisions you're making? And they'll say, well, I want to do the right thing, or I want to get into school, or I want to succeed. I said, what if you just answered because it's who I am? And when students hear that, they get rocked a bit. Like they're like, oh my gosh. But I'm like, wouldn't that be the greatest answer? And when they hear that, they recognize it. They're like, yeah, what if every time I was making a choice, I just stopped and said, is this who I am? Is this who I want to be? Because that's the world we want, the way the world ought to be, right? Is based on my best self in the moment. And so I really appreciated that, Justin, because to be totally transparent, I didn't have this in high school. So I wish I did, right? And I love that you said, hey, I remember trying to figure out girls or figuring out. The beauty of this approach is you're not figuring out a gender or a group. You're just asking and getting the answer. You cut out all the games. You cut out the guessing, the manipulation. It's just straightforward. And it actually shows way more confidence than sitting there for 15 minutes, half hour. Do I make my move? Do I not make my move? Right? All of that craziness that happens in those moments for high schoolers and college students and people of all ages.
Yeah, I was doing math, and the thing I had to do was just talk. Who would have known?
Right.
I can't help but to think that Mike's topic and what you talk about tomorrow, Justin, on bullying and stuff, there's a lot of overlap on those two, on how, the consent thing really needs to be taught, because the bullying aspect is going to push them to feel the pressure to conform so much to what they think is happening.
Well, yeah, so. And if you believe that every human being deserves dignity and respect, which is at the core of consent, if you believe that, you don't bully. It cannot exist if you believe every human being deserves dignity and respect. The second you're in a bully mode, you believe that person's less than, or you're less than, and you're acting out to prove you're more than, as Justin's well aware. But it's based in this lack of either valuing myself or other people. It's one or the other on those extremes.
Definitely got all of that. 100%.
I'll give you an example. Last night, I said I was speaking to the U.S. Naval Academy, and a student said, this changed my perspective of thinking that consent was necessary and awkward and uncomfortable to essential in exploring confidence, care, and compassion for the other human being. Right? And that's what we want to talk about. I'm not just doing this because I'm supposed to. I'm doing this because this is how I want to treat another human being. This is how I want to be treated, right? And making that shift, and it's a big shift.
Definitely, it's one of the lessons that seems to be necessary today. The question of empathy, especially with this whole world, because Brittany did a presentation yesterday, and she was talking about this study that isolation is one of the main causes of depression and etc. for today's problems in youth. And we think that's crazy because we have social media. In theory, we should have more connection, more of these things. And yet, for some reason, communication's at an all-time low. So these tools of talking about empathy and being able to communicate with people are so critical for all of this. Because you know what? How you want to be treated is the root of empathy, right? I can imagine myself in these situations, so I'm going to express it like this. Because you know what? I'm not going to react. I wouldn't react if somebody talked like this. I would be grateful if somebody said, hey, can I kiss you? And I'd be all jittery in my head dancing. Like you said, I would be dancing. Anyway, I love what you talk about. And I can't wait. Our topics overlap so much. And I definitely want to chat with you more about that. But let's talk about other people too.
Well, I look forward to having that conversation down the road. That'd be great.
I'll send you a DM.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. Appreciate that.
Oh, my
let's move over to Nikki Espresso Joyner.
I'm taking that for forever. That's so great. I love it so much. I once had a client who described me like that to another administrator at their school, and I just really latched onto it. I thought this is very accurate, and I love it so much. So it has now become a core part of how I talk about myself, which I think is great.
I love it.
But yeah, so I had a great time putting this together, and it's not often that I do a like pre-recorded kind of short video. I'm a workshop girly through and through. So I get to travel around the country and do a ton of workshops around this topic, whether it is resume development or how to optimize an online profile, what people who actually hire are looking for. So this was like a little bit of like a challenge for me personally as a speaker to be like, how can I give this in like a jam-packed, bite-sized way that people would actually resonate with? So I decided to move forward with like 4 simple things that you should be doing right now to get the job that you want later. So in the session or in the video, we talked about number 1, first and foremost, the email address. The divaprincess47@gmail.com has got to go. Like soccer daddy, LOL. Like it's got to go. It's all of these email addresses have got to go. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've seen business representatives actually pass on candidates because they didn't find their email address funny or they didn't find it witty. And a lot of students have not yet understood that the email address needs to coincide with the brand. So we talked about that, and I gave some suggestions on how folks can do that in a way that's meaningful. I see it a lot of times in like younger candidates, so folks that are in high school or even freshmen, sophomores in college. So we talked about that. We also talked about number 2, which is your like image online. What is your digital image? Especially in the era of social media, y'all. We have some people that are taking photos that they forget are out there in the universe. And then they are trying to get a job. And the first thing that pops up when I search Kevin is this photo of Kevin, or whatever, like, yeah, being wild. And again, people will search you online. It's not just all about your profile, but what else can they find about you? So I taught the students how to scrub the internet for the stuff that they need to get off there, and then how to make sure that the stuff that I actually want on there is at the top of the page so that people will find it. We also talked a lot about the resumes. Okay. Like I see students so many times that will like pay people to do their resumes or find these career coaches online and pay hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. Parents and guardians are doing this too for their kids. Y'all don't need that. You don't need that. So I talked about what are the staple things that you need in a resume and how not to get it from Canva and Etsy and all these other places that sell you templates. And I linked my template. So if y'all want to use my template, I like to think it gets people hired. It got me hired several times. So we talked about that. And then 4th, which I think is probably the most important topic that I get the most questions on, is like, how do you optimize your profile? Like LinkedIn, Indeed, Handshake, whatever profile you have that you're finding jobs on, how do you optimize it so that you can find jobs, but also jobs can find you? So as I was doing the video, y'all, I'm going to be honest, that last topic, I was like, I probably just should have spent the whole session doing that because I absolutely love that topic. But overall, those are like 4 core areas that I talk about. So I just thought I'd jam pack them all together in the session, put together a little 12-minute video that kind of felt like an Instagram reel to me as I was making it. So I love it.
It was awesome because there's so many things that seem so simple, but especially younger people that are in that position of, oh, I've got to create a resume, and they're not going to think of those things like the email address and
yes,
start Googling yourself, those sort of things. So I think there was some powerful messages in there that, at some point you're all going to be creating a resume. These are important things, and coming from someone with the experience you have, I think is so valuable.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I'm just going to want to jump in because I'm so curious. Nikki,
Sure.
I thought, back when we were in school, by the way, Skater Dude XX8 was my
all right,
put it out there.
There it is.
And I'm still a skater dude, let's be honest. But I thought we had that problem. I thought now most schools are like in middle school, like, okay, here's your Johnny.Fredrickson, whatever, that's a worse name, but Johnny.Fredrickson@gmail.com. We're giving you your regular Gmail. Is it like just like some schools doing that? Not really. You still seeing the crazy emails? Like I thought
Yeah,
Mm.
I would say at large, I see two things with students. Number one, they're using a personal email as their Gmail account, or number two, they're using a school email. So an email that a school gives them, maybe that's attached to the school. So like
Right.
attached to the high school or that's attached to the college. Sometimes the problem with that is when the email gets swiped, meaning the student no longer has access to it,
Gotcha,
then
gotcha.
they don't have any of those emails or connection points
I
that
did
they
not realize that they would take that email from them. Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, in some, like, you
Yeah.
know, they use it for life. Others, I've seen, you know, I'll see candidates in the system with the company that I used to work for. And I mean, they will have 4 or 5 profiles in there with 4 or 5 different email addresses, their high school email address, their college email address, their Skater Dude 88 email address, like all of those things. And again, for me, yes, it's about the brand awareness of like, what does your email say about you? But from you, it's also like you spend a lot of time applying for jobs. So let's make it as easy and efficient as possible for you always to have that one hub to go to.
Nice.
One thing about the student email, especially in high school, that I have observed and why I would encourage them not to use that, building on that, is years ago, during 2020 and 21, we were doing a lot of virtual events like everyone was. And we were doing some virtual conferences, engaging with high school students. And they register for these things using their email address. Well, that email address is still in our system. So when we send a broadcast out, what I notice is those are always the ones that get opened first. And those kids are no longer at that high school. We got to purge them out. But that system is automatically opening those emails and checking any link on it. Now, I don't know how it's doing it, but it's checking the links on it. So it may boot things that it doesn't like, going forward. So
not may, it is.
Yeah,
I can tell you, working with schools, that's true with administrators. You think they're getting your emails because it says it's open, but it's actually been blocked because of the topics you address or talk about. So, absolutely. The more you're in Gmail or something else, way more likely to get through than schools have such secure servers now because of porn and other things. They have to. But that's one of the reasons they tighten up that.
Totally. And, as you start applying for jobs, whether it is you're really interested in a company or a particular industry, you will sign up for their newsletters. So you will sign up to get emails from Amazon every month about internships. You will sign up to get emails from JP Morgan Chase. And if you're using your school email address and the employer is putting any sort of live link in there, to Mike's point, they will block it. So you as candidate will never receive that. So that's why I always recommend that candidates are using a personal email address to apply for something. But then we run the risk of your personal email address sometimes is something that you made when you were in like 7th or 8th grade. And you have not transitioned over to the mature land of the adults. And as a result, sometimes, employers are like, wait a minute. Same thing with your resume. Sometimes people will have a resume that they make in middle school or high school and they won't update it when they get to college or the workforce or trade school or wherever they're going. And they have this resume that is like super outdated. I always like to use the example of like, this is classic. When you see a Wendy's commercial, you look at the cheeseburger that Wendy's shows you on the commercial and it just looks voluptuous and so large and in charge. I mean, it looks like your mouth is watering, right? Then when you actually go to Wendy's and you order said cheeseburger and they bring it in the bag, it's like squished. That is people's resumes. That is what happens to your resume. When you do not update consistently, you are getting a condensed, squished version of the Wendy's cheeseburger. And we don't want to see a squished version of the cheeseburger. We want to see the commercialized version of the cheeseburger. So that's what I always use, especially with like middle school and high school students, because they're like, oh yeah, I totally get it. But a lot of analogies like that is really what is like rooted in how I educate people, because there's so much advice out there about like what to put on your resume, where to put things, how it should be organized. And my goal is not to tell students what my preference is, because as a recruiter, I had preferences, but so did the other 18 recruiters on our team. And some of them were different. So instead of just going around the world and sharing all of my preferences about what I liked as a recruiter and didn't like, I try to get the students to think about like what would actually be something that they could utilize in the context of their own self, in their own like critical thinking brain, as opposed to just being like, your education should always be at the top. Like, That's not my message. But my message is, let's think about the framework that I give you and how can you leverage that based upon whatever point in your life that you're in. So I think that's why I love this topic so much, is because for me, it's less about like all the advice and guidance in the world, but like, how can I help get them to think really critically about what do you need to do to get the job that you want? And most importantly, the job that you deserve, because it's a noisy world and searching for jobs is hard.
Absolutely. So go ahead, Justin.
Oh, thanks. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Well, I sort of did, but I did. But anyway, I want to add on to like, because I watched your video and I was thinking to myself, like, this idea came up to me because I thought the Canva like template was gold because like the picture in it, and like I remember like reading in like psychology because my official education is cognitive neuroscience, so I have like this big background in knowing what the brain likes, and whenever you put a face on a resume, I always heard that like that made you more memorable. So like I think of like these Canva like things, templates with those pictures. And then you said you should put it in a Word format because it goes through these softwares that read through the email. I was like, huh? Okay, there's softwares? Like, who are these softwares? What do they do? What do they look at? Like,
Yes.
like is that like the first level of screening? Go like through software? Like, what are these companies? If I can ask that question.
Yeah. So super common, especially now in today's society where, I mean, the job market is flooded. There's a lot of people looking for jobs, not a lot of jobs. We're starting to equalize out just a little bit, but we're just in a day and age where we no longer drop off the resume at the front office. I was like, please review my thing. So many companies are leveraging some sort of online platform. It is commonly known as an ATS, or an applicant tracking system. Now, there are some myths associated with the ATS sometimes, and most often I hear students say, well, I just want to get out of the ATS as soon as possible. Actually, inaccurate. You want to be in the ATS as long as possible because that means your application is live. That means that like I'm still looking at your stuff. It is like the holding bucket, like the digital holding bucket. Where the ATS comes into play is screening. So say, for example, I'm looking for junior candidates that are in college and are authorized to work in the United States over time and are graduating between this time frame and this time frame. And they are pursuing a bachelor's degree. When they fill out their application, the system is going to ask them some questions. Are you authorized to work in the United States over time? Are you pursuing a bachelor's degree? When are you graduating? If all of their answers are within the realm of what we're looking for, the system will pass them. If it's not, the system will fail them. And that's what we call minimum expectations for a job. Now, this happens a lot to students. Students will get so excited about an internship and not realize that they don't qualify for it. So they'll spend hours going through and filling out the application and tailoring their resume, and then they'll get a rejection email 24 hours later, and then they'll hate the world and everyone in it because they're like, why did I just waste my time with this? This is so ridiculous. I hate it, et cetera, because they didn't read instructions. If they would have read the instructions, they would have known that they don't qualify for the program. So Justin, what you're referring to is the system that is doing minimum screening. Before we had the technology, it was the person at the front desk being like, oh, I see here on your paper resume that we have these things. What's your graduation year? Okay, check. Where do you go to school? Check. Okay, this looks good. I'm going to pass it over to my boss. Now it's just a computer that does that a lot more efficiently. But there's a lot of myths out there because people spreading a lot of unfactual, ridiculous information, and it's frustrating the students. So the long and the short of it is we can certainly leverage technology, but there's always real eyes on an application. An application that's live, there's always real eyes on it. It's never a computer 150% of the time. That's just myth number 488.
So yeah, if you're watching this live right now, you can see you definitely, as a student, as a teacher, as a parent, you want to go listen to Nikki's presentation because it hits on some really important things that I think are really valuable for any of us that are filling out resumes. You know, it's been 20 something years since I had a resume, but I was thinking that when you guys were just talking about that, I applied for a job at a bank and I had my picture on the resume and I got the job and they said, will you please resubmit the resume and take your picture off of it? Because we're not keeping the one on file that has your picture.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes it's like to the point, right? There's always two sides to everything. There's right, there's wrong, and there's different, right? The picture is not in the wrong bucket because sometimes people will put their picture on there, but we want to be mindful that when it works well, it also doesn't work well. So there are people who will review resumes and see a photo. And if I see a picture of someone who does not appear to be a traditional age college student, and this is a internship for college students, they may qualify, but I may see their photo and they may look like they are in their 30s or 40s. And I may assume that they are in their 30s or 40s. So I may nix their resume because I may think that this is not a good program for them just based upon the implicit biases that I have. That oftentimes happens in male dominated spaces when it's women. So there is also lots of negatives that can sometimes be attached to the photo. I've seen that happen with addresses. If you have your physical address on a resume, I've seen that happen. Photos. We never want to give people ammo to put us in a bucket that we don't want to be put in. So as a result, I'm always like, give people just a little taste. And then any question that they can legally ask you in the interview, they will do that. But I always tell students, I am sure that you are a beautiful human being. Leave your photo for like all your social media stuff, for all your friends to see and people that are close to you, because I'm not concerned about what you look like. I just want to know that you can do the job.
Great. Thank you. All right. Thank you. And again, ignitenextgen.com. If you are not part of this, go sign up and you can still access day 1 and 2. Kevin, let's jump over to you. Give us a rundown of what we had an opportunity to listen to you talk about today.
Yeah. So basically, what I've learned making some good decisions in my life and making a ton of bad decisions in my life is that so much of our mental health as adults, especially teens, comes down to the decisions that we make. And when I say the decisions that we make, I'm talking about as small as, what do we work out today, or do we skip today? What do we have for breakfast? Or from as large as, what college do I go to? What career path do I take? Do I date that person? Do I not? Do I get in the car when I shouldn't? All these types of decisions that ultimately, like I said, affect our well-being, our mental health, and the results of our lives at the end of the day. And what I've done over the years is organize it into what I call the 3 truths. And these are the 3 absolutes that happen every time we make any type of micro or macro decision in our life. And it kind of starts with our story. So what is the subconscious story that we tell ourselves? Teenagers a lot of times have stories that are fed to them by the people closest to them, right? Money doesn't grow on trees. Measure twice, cut once. All these like stupid things that are usually negative. For me, I've found is that students don't even realize that they have these subconscious stories, that they're not good enough, fast enough, strong enough, pretty enough. So how do we rewrite that story? I teach them a really simple thing, which I actually did in the video, where it's called the story cycle. And this is very out there. This is not my doing, but it is my adaptation of this, where basically the story that we tell ourselves, consciously or subconsciously, mostly subconsciously, will affect our actions that we take, good or bad. Those actions will then affect the results that we get, and the results that we get will reinforce that story. So if a student is, saying, I suck at math, math is terrible, I hate math, Pythagorean theorem, why, right? Then we know those actions are going to be negative. They're not going to go to extra help or, study effectively and consistently. They're not going to use ChatGPT wisely. All these amazing things. What's going to happen? Well, the results are going to be poor grades and quizzes and tests, and they're probably going to fail a course. And then that reinforces the story. See, math really is just not for me. So how do we change that story? There's many different ways we can do that. The simplest way is using the word yet. I'm not good enough at math yet, but I will be, and I will sacrifice. I will do this. I'll put some time. So, it's a really interesting little diagram and process of rewriting our story. And that's truth number 1. For me, my story was identity. My identity of being a professional musician and music teacher was everything to me. And when I didn't have that identity, and I was living incongruent with that, well, there you're going to have some stress and anxiety come on. And I dealt with that in all the negative ways possible, which resulted in truth number 2 is that we have really bad consequences for the bad decisions that we make. Throughout my life, I've had some bad things happen to me as the direct result of what I've done. And at some point I just said, I gotta make a change. This has got to stop. So throughout a long journey, I ended up my career at the Royal Liège Conservatory in Belgium, doing my master's work for music. And that was like the birthplace of what everything, my own breakthroughs, and then just the very beginnings of all this that I wanted to teach students. And that's where we talk about our truth number 3 is our decisions are ours to make. We talk about accountability versus victimhood. You know, like, do we say there, woe is me? Look at all, I mean, James, you're talking about like just that grumpy type of negativity that we're facing. Like, oh, it's like, okay, cool. Now what? Like, are we going to change our perspective? And that's why I think, James, you and I really like resonated when we like first met and talked about our stuff, because there's really a lot of overlapping themes. Do we look at our life and say, man, I'm so grateful for what we have. Now I don't have to be accountable. I get to be accountable. I get to be accountable to all the things that I want to do, my dreams, my goals, my aspirations, all these great, amazing things. So, you know, that is kind of the gist of that. And it's very near and dear to my heart, because this is not like a topic I picked. And as we're all sitting here and we're all talking about such important things that affected our lives. I mean, that's the truth of it, right? But just for me, the way I structure when I speak to students in schools or youth organizations, you know, bringing in the music element, bringing in some of my own personal stories, you know, yeah, it's very special. I'm very lucky. I mean, we're all very lucky to be able to do what we do, because it's like what we were supposed to do. It's so crazy. So yeah, that's my gist. Yeah.
I love it.
So,
One of the things that sorry, go ahead, James.
Well, I was just going to say, after Kevin and I's conversation on our podcast, I started using the word yet and trying to work it in with my children as they tell their stories. And now that they will finish a sentence with me. I can't do this. And then I'll look at them and they'll look back at me and go, yet. You know, but I know, you know, they're doing it snarky and they're not happy about saying it, but it's becoming a part of who they are now, because now it's kind of changing things, and it's a slow drip into their lives. I think that could influence them in a stronger way later down the road. So
the thing that I really like in that cycle, you've got the story, the actions, results, that when part of that is wrong, it's a cycle, but you can focus on one of the parts to correct it. You know, I'm not good at math. There you're telling that story. Well, if you focus on the actions, you're going to get the different results. That's going to change that story. And so if part of that is missing, you can use the other parts of it to correct it.
100%. Right.
So
we don't always have to start with a story, because sometimes it's elusive. Sometimes it's confusing. Sometimes we're trying to, I mean, especially when we don't even know who we are as kids, right? We're trying to figure out, you know, a lot of times it's like, all right, I don't really know what's going on, but I know I should, you know, work out. So I'm just going to work out. And all of a sudden things start to change from there. Yeah.
That's great. Any other comments or go ahead.
Sorry, I'm interrupting again. I'm choosing this time.
As you should be, sir.
That's the rude Canadian.
That's not a word you hear very often. So.
Okay, so if I may, sorry, but sorry, I had to like do the Canadian bit. But anyway,
says the other Canadian, by the way.
Right.
Yeah, I forgot about it. Anyway, so I watched your talk and I absolutely loved it. It reminded me, because like I said earlier, I come from like a root of like education in cognitive neuroscience. Yeah. So basically this exact approach. And I remembered like profs talking to me about this and making me read this stuff. And I'd be like, I don't understand. This is so vague. Like a thought and a thought and a thought. You made it so clear and communicatable. Like honestly, congratulations, because like cognitive science is rough and you made it really easy and simple to understand. And I absolutely love like the breakdowns that you have. And like I looked at all those things and I could see like so many use cases. Like your cycle there, that in specific, one thing that like came to mind for me is that sometimes like those like stories that you tell yourself, right? Sometimes your story is your own, and actually the action that you take, if it's not parallel to the story, it makes you actually do something called cognitive dissonance, which means you're not aligned with your story, with your actions, and that gives you mental turmoil. It's a very like common thing, and I noticed that in bullying, like in my talks and stuff, that people that witness bullying tend to be affected by bullying. And one of the reasons why is like, because say like I'm in a group and one guy is bullying this one girl and I do nothing about it. It goes against my value that like nobody should be bullied, but because I let it go by, it hurts my moral thing. And my moral imperative is that I'm not who I am, a person that doesn't believe in bullying. So negative consequences happen when you don't use this thing to guide yourself in your actions. Anyway, sorry, I'm like
no, love it. No, I'm so glad you said that, because that's if you heard from earlier what I was saying, that's exactly cognitive dissonance, right?
Yep, cognitive dissonance.
That's exactly what I was experiencing in my early 20s, living and creating this story or identity, around myself. And if you don't live that, and that's why it's funny as a musician. One of the other things I am just beginning to do now is to coach students on stage fright. So, stage performance coaching. And the reason why I'm extremely equipped to do this is because I was fairly hindered with stage fright. And not when I say stage fright, that's a very wide-ranging term, but just nerves. And nerves, not that I'm like, oh, I don't want to play, like nerves that just would resonate in their physical place where it would affect my playing. So I was so burdened by that for a long time, and I did a lot of work on that, but only when I changed the story around my performing did it completely go away. So I can be in front of 800, 1,000, even more students, high school students, middle school students, the hardest critics out there. And I can play some pretty complicated stuff, and I don't have the slightest bit of nerves. It doesn't affect me whatsoever because of the story, because of the identity that I am not, my self-worth is not my last gig. And that was the biggest thing. I mean, I did my senior recital in college thinking that was going to be the pinnacle of my, but like, it was ridiculous. It's just a gig. Do the gig, So, yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, completely agree. Yeah.
I needed to hear that last part. I just want you to hear that. Yes, I needed to hear that. I think sometimes we forget that, we get so wrapped up in our stuff. Sure. That it becomes us. I literally wrote down in all capital letters, yet. You see? Nice. Yet. I'm like, I don't have children, but I'll do it to myself.
Kevin, do you know that Mike does speech training as well? I noticed his post lately on LinkedIn where he is promoting that as well. So,
oh, nice. There we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Love helping people find their voice and make an impact.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah,
all right.
About that, so. Sorry.
Well, this is awesome. No, this is great. Appreciate you guys, and
we got one more to go over.
We do. Let's. In fact, who is that? That's Samuel Brown.
That's Samuel Brown.
Yeah.
Samuel's topic was goal setting, and in his title, the G and the O is emphasized. So, goal setting for success and empowering students to chase their goals. And one of the quotes that stuck out to me from him is, you can either be the driver of your own goals or the passenger of someone else's. And he really kind of focused that. And I love that because that is so true, especially for young people. Most of them are the passenger of someone else's goals. And it's when we can empower them to do that. And so his presentation really dives into that. And if you get a chance to talk with Sam and listen to who he's working with and the things that he's doing, he's living this. He's trying to help young people that he's working with in the organizations he does, empowering them so they know how to do this. Yeah, I'm a
Very
Ziegler
good.
guy, so goal setting is always like a big deal to us. So.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys. And again, ignitenextgen.com. You can still get back and watch all of these presentations. And then we've got more coming. So it's awesome.
And
Want y'all to
tomorrow
join. Go ahead.
is Jeff, is the day you're hosting, and we 3 of the 5 on tomorrow are from.
Oh,
Come on,
Canada.
Yeah, there you go. Got 3 of the 5 tomorrow that are from Canada. So that's that was kind of how we put together that group there. And the topics for tomorrow. Let's see, Jeff, what's yours on?
Mine is actually focusing on helping youth own their goals and own their future.
And Justin, yours is tomorrow. What's yours?
Mine is a personal story. First and foremost, to tell you that I sucked at bullying and then I got good at it. Teaching the right way to address conflict, because it took me years to figure out I could have done bullying so much better when I was getting bullied. And I learned so many tools. So I teach a conflict resolution tool and basically mental resilience, something that helps you bounce back and deal with people properly in a bullying type situation. When everything hits the fan at you and you don't know what to do, my video is to give a tool to kids so that they can act. They know what to do when stuff hits the fan.
And who else we got on tomorrow, Jeff?
We got Kate, and hers is Even Crazy Dreams Come True. And then Kwesi is Becoming Unbreakable.
And then it's Saul tomorrow too. Is it Saul tomorrow? Yeah. And
Yeah,
Saul's
I didn't
tomorrow
so
as
far.
well. Saul's got a unique topic he's talked about. Something that's not really discussed a lot and needs to be is the dangers and the perils that we are seeing now with online gambling, and how it is really a hidden epidemic that is in. He's got a great story that is coming forth on that. So that's tomorrow. And you can still sign up. And especially friends of the presenters. I think the last 3 or 4 people that I saw signed up today, I started investigating them. Their connection was to Nikki. So they're friends of hers that had signed up today. So did you know that? You look like you're smiling like you knew that. So
Yes, I had a handful of people who asked for the link, and I've been messaging it all day. So I've been doing resume review, send link. Video on resume review, send link. Here's a resume template, send link. I probably sent it close to 50 times today. So,
well, all right. Well, thank everybody for being with us tonight. Thank the audience. I've been tracking the numbers that I can see as a thing. This is the biggest audience that we probably had in several of these lives. So that's great. It's nice to hear that. So
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Errol, for viewing and what's going on. So thank you, audience, as we hang out.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone.